Welcome to B2B Marketing Methods. I'm your host, Terri Hoffman, and I'm the CEO of Marketing Refresh. Let's face it, embracing digital marketing is daunting. This podcast was created to make it more approachable. Join me as we talk to CEOs, sales leaders, and revenue growth experts who will share lessons learned and tips from their own journeys. Hi, and welcome to B2B Marketing Methods. We're excited today to have a guest with us named Hunter Holtshopple. Hunter is the Marcom Manager for the evaluation business line at SLB. As we get into the conversation, I'm going to let him explain his responsibilities and what that job title, what the overall responsibilities of his job are, and certainly talk about how that fits into the overall global brand that is SLB. Some of the things that we're going to cover today are, I definitely want to talk about Hunter's podcast that he hosts and talk about some of the vision that he's got for that, how that helps him show the value proposition of the products that he's responsible for marketing. We're going to be talking about some of the challenges and obstacles that he has either overcome or currently deals with in his role. SLB is a very large and significant global brand. Being in a marketing role at a company like that immediately comes with its own challenges, but we'll dive into that more today. I think there's a lot that our listeners can learn from Hunter. So Hunter, welcome. Thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Terri. I'm excited to be on this side of podcast for once.
Right. It's fun. You just get to show up and answer questions. Maybe we can just start with having you talk about your current role. And then from there, I'm going to step back and kind of talk about how you got into that role. So okay. Tell us about your day-to-day responsibilities now.
Okay, yeah, certainly. So I'm, as you mentioned, Marcom Manager for our evaluation business line. So looking after, well, I guess before I get into what I look after, I'll step back and talk about the company structure as a whole. So SLB, as you mentioned, is a global energy service company. Well, I should say technology company, traditionally in oil field and now into broader energy. And we have different business or different divisions. So we have our core divisions, which is primarily oil and gas, new energy, and digital. And then within the division, one of which is reservoir performance, sits business lines, and I look over the evaluation business line. So yeah, lots of marketing people and groups, and I work with the reservoir performance one within marketing and communications. So I look after the global evaluation communication, so product launches, somewhat involved in our strategy, at least on the external messaging. I try to interject myself when and where I can, though, because it's kind of exciting to get that global look, especially as traditionally I've been focused on the US. And then working on trade shows and pretty much anytime there's any external communication, also very tied with sales, giving them the collateral they need, and then our internal communications. Funny enough, we in the past had a hard time communicating to our internal, well, I shouldn't say in the past, we still do, a hard time communicating to our internal sales team and our internal teams before we go external. So we're working on making that more seamless and cohesive. So yeah, I think maybe I covered it all, or at least touched on some of it, but mostly in general, looking after the external communications of our products and services for evaluation.
Okay. So something that I think is really interesting about your job history is that, and I think this is true for a lot of people in digital marketing roles or Marcom roles, is they don't have like a traditional path to arriving at that role. So let's turn the clock back a little bit and kind of talk about where your career started and how it evolved into the role and kind of how you landed where you are now.
Certainly. Yeah. It's a bit unconventional for marketing, I'd say. So I'm a mechanical engineer by schooling, and
Badgers, by the way, I'm a cheesehead. But
yeah, I went to UW-Madison and graduated. Well, right before graduating, was walking around the career fair and saw this booth for a company, Schlumberger. I'm like, oh, what's that? Had no idea, never heard of the company before. And they're like, hey, we can, you can join the company and travel the world and do all this stuff. And I was like, oh, that's really cool and exciting. So I joined as a field engineer, and basically you're given a crew and some tools and said, hey, go evaluate oil wells. I was doing wireline, which is a means of evaluating oil and gas wells. So I did that for about 5 years, went to all over the world, India, Canada, a lot of places in the US. It was fun, exciting, challenging, many sleepless nights, many continuous days in the field, offshore for months at a time. extreme temperatures in the desert, frozen tundra nights. I mean, it was crazy, but really rewarding. And I feel like I learned a lot, as probably most people who start in the field in Schlumberger at the time. And in the field, we have a fixed step training program. So I went through the fixed steps and kind of graduated out of the field and became a new position in maintenance. So it's kind of looking over all of the maintenance and tool op checks and all of that in the entire West Texas basin, which is pretty exciting because I got to kind of help shape the role into what I thought it should be, for
Mhm.
better or worse. And then from there, I went to my first kind of foray into marketing, a different side though, into market analyst. So I was market analyst for the entire US land, Canada land, and looking at all services. So not just wireline. So I kind of got to step back and see what the entire company does in North America land. And then from there, I worked with our sales manager for wireline. So through talking with him, I guess went back to wireline, but in a new position as sales. And I was working in Midland, and I did that for about 3 years. And in that role, I noticed that for some services that I had a fondness for, we were lacking marketing material. So I just started making my own. It was during kind of like lockdown and isolated to my house. So I was just making marketing material. And then that kind of graduated into starting a LinkedIn page and then working with a marketing company. And then eventually either I got the good attention or bad attention from the Marcom team, and they pulled me into Marcom. So I do it officially through them. So that's where I got this role about 2.5 years ago. And I've been doing Marcom since then. So yeah, a
Wow.
lot of paths and winding path to get to Marcom at SLB.
Well, I find it super interesting because there, especially when you're putting together like B2B marketing strategies or marketing communication strategies for a company that has a technical offering, that connection and the thread between engineering, the market itself, and what their needs are, and then the way the sales and marketing team work together to go to market with that's critical, right?
Yeah.
It has to all work together, and you've been able to experience really each one of those
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
operational areas, which is pretty unique.
Yeah.
Do you think that gives you kind of an advantage in the role, having that history?
Yeah, I'd say it's so our team. So we have like our divisions, and then we have our central communications function team, and that function is really traditionally like marketing designers, writers, and that's kind of like I would say maybe traditional marketing team, communications team. And we have a gentleman there, Josh, who's come in rather recently, the last 3 years, and is really kind of professionalizing that organization. And then on the other side, we have on the division teams, there's a lot of people kind of more like me who've come up through the company, through the field, and have that technical background. But then on our team, we also have one of my colleagues who's traditional marketing background and been in Marcom for her whole career. And I think the balance is nice because she brings the fundamentals of marketing, and then me and my other colleague who are more engineering background can bring the kind of technical knowledge. And when we bring those together, it's, I think, unstoppable. Like you said, having both sides and being able to see kind of what the sales team needs and wants and how to communicate with customers, and then bringing the communication experts and relying on that side of the team to help foster like, cohesive marketing plan and doing things correctly. Because if left to my own devices, I would do things probably very wrong.
Well, I would have to imagine that there could be some gaps if it was purely driven by a traditional marketing person as well. So it's really that blending of the strengths and different perspectives that I think are really important. I mean, that's for our agency, that is one of the challenges we run into, is how do we make the content technical enough so that it holds enough credibility for that brand or that product line, but it's not so heavy on the technical side that it's too hard to read or just takes way too many brain cells
Yeah.
to read, even though the person reading it is very intelligent and can understand it. They may not want to spend that much brain power
For sure.
on that particular task.
That's
Yeah.
probably distilling a very technical case study that's 10 pages into a 1 page flyer, or someone's speech that should take 5 minutes and it's taking 30 minutes, and how to bring the message down and make it nice and tight and digestible. Because if someone is interested or doesn't know and you hook them, then that's half the battle. And then you can dig deeper once they're already hooked. I think we have a very strong technical community, and they are brilliant people and like so smart, but having to communicate to someone who isn't at their level can be a challenge, and kind of helping decipher that message has been really fun. And I feel like I've found it very enjoyable. And I think, to your point, the background of being in the field and having some of that engineering knowledge from working through the company the last 10 years or 13 years, I guess. Wow, that's crazy. 13 years has helped me navigate that. So yeah, definitely a blessing to have that background and getting to express it creatively.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, so how do you guys have, and I don't want to dig in too much to things that might be proprietary or things that you don't want to discuss, but maybe just generally speaking, would you say that you have regular touch points internally and then also with maybe some of the other subject matter experts to ensure that you're kind of striking that right balance and working on the next steps of the content strategy? Is that something you guys make time for and prioritize as a group?
Yeah, so there's kind of two parallel paths. I would say like there's the central comms strategy and really the strategy of the company, which is the SLB brand and our vision led by our CEO. And then the divisions and the business lines have their own strategy, and everything kind of rolls up. So we make sure everything is cohesive. I would say my touch points are more with the technical people. So running things by them, and then once it's kind of distilled to where I think it's good, I pass it to our communications group, our Marcom group, and they package it up and probably distill it even more and check for poor grammar and things like that and make it beautiful. And then we come up with a plan to distribute. And so, yeah, I would say like really my role is probably a bridge between the core comms and the technical headquarters team for Reservoir Performance. So we're navigating that, sitting in and try to leading the go-to-market strategies or the positioning workshops, stuff like that. So we're right in the mix of it. And yeah, I would say for sure, regular touch points with the technical teams.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I dug into that is because I think that just knowing that a role like yours that sits in between those two groups and acts as a facilitator and somewhat of a translator is really important. Like, not every company has that, whether they're small or at a global scale like SLB. It's important to have that person who's really facilitating those conversations and obviously adding value to them because of your own knowledge and just working history of the brand. You can definitely take maybe some ideas and take them further because of the experience you have as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's huge.
And I think it helps to be able to talk both languages, because sometimes you get someone who's like more creative and really good at that side of things and maybe has a harder time understanding the technical, and the technical person vice versa. And like having those two people talk can be like, they both walk away like that person's crazy, and being able to talk both languages helps to really facilitate. And I think it's really helped us, especially in the last couple of years with our division and business line, to accelerate the output and the content and make it more digestible. We maybe went a little too far when I first started to really fun, very digestible and not very technical. And now we're kind of leaning back towards the technical. So we're learning as we go, but yeah, being able to act as the middleman has really been very helpful.
Are there certain data points or metrics or feedback that you're hearing that you're kind of using as a tool to learn how to make adjustments?
Certainly, we like, as my manager says, we like to make data-driven decisions. With being such a big company, our website, I think, has like 5,000 plus pages or something. So trying to get data from that, and the way our sales cycle is, it's a little bit hard to get, we're not just selling a product and you can see marketing, oh, click this and buy this product. The sales cycle can be 1 to 5 years sometimes. I mean, it's very long. But we do have the conventional metrics like time on page, clicks, views, all those. So when we are making content, we use the metrics that we have available and try to push our content in the right way. And we've seen actually sometimes what we thought is not going to perform well, or this piece of content is going to perform better, and like the other one doesn't. Like, oh, okay, well, let's make more of this type of content. And that's for the content generation. But yes, we're trying to use data to drive our decision making and the way we go. And that's kind of one part of the learning. And then we also interview our sales team and ask them, what are you hearing from the customers? What do they like? And what's their reception to this? Because we have such a strong sales community and we know all of our customers. So it's kind of nice in that sense. And then one other thing I'd say is, which is kind of unique to the company. I mean, because we have this diverse career path and no one at the company, well, not no one, I'm sure there's some people who have duplicate career paths, but typically they're pretty unique, is there's a lot of on the job training, and people are very open to helping and guiding and sharing their learnings, because when it's time to move, it's like, hey, it's time to move, and you got a week or 2 weeks, and then the next person comes. Now, the higher you go, maybe the more of a handover, but sometimes like, hey, you're in this new position now, and you got to jump headfirst in and figure out what to do. So we do rely on kind of people's guidance in that strong central team to help point us in the right direction. And in the last 2.5 years, I've learned tremendously on like what marketing is and how to market. And, coming in as like a total newbie, I've learned a ton. And I'm really excited to take it to the next stage of my career, whether it's in marketing further or in sales or whatever the case may be. I think it's a very good perspective to have on the business cycle for sure.
What are some of the avenues you've taken, or the places, whether it's people, online training tools, classes, like what's helped you the most in terms of learning what the whole Marcom world is about? What's been helpful for you?
Honestly, my favorite learning channel is YouTube, and a lot of market research, but just watching what I like and trying to replicate that has been fun. Like, oh, this series is really done really well. Let's do something like that. Or it's just thinking like what I like, because I am in a way my customer, I engineer, we're selling to engineers. What would I like to watch, and then testing it out and seeing if it works. So just try a little bit of trial and error is one learning method. We have a pretty strong education kind of path for like our sales team. And so because that doesn't really exist too much for marketing right now, SLB has offered to let us take online courses. So I did some courses at the Berkeley Extension, I think is what it's called. Okay. And I have a couple of books, and then just listening to other professionals in the industry. And then recently we have an agency that the central comms team has started working with, and they've been helping us be a little bit more professional and guiding us a little bit more. So leaning on them and taking what we've learned from them and incorporating it into the next iteration of what we do. So a little bit of everything. I would say the biggest learning though is trial and error for me.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, something that I've learned when we hire people with a marketing degree out of college is there's a great foundation of information, right? Like you've got to learn what is a brand, what is marketing communications, what is market research, and how do those things tie together. But I've always believed marketing is more of like an apprenticeship type profession. And getting coached and mentored by someone, and then seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work is really where the rubber meets the road. Like that's the true learning place. But you only can do that if you're evaluating the data, like you guys are doing pretty actively. So yeah.
It's interesting. I think sometimes from an outsider's perspective, or initially, marketing is just what you like, the Coca-Cola ad, or the commercial you see on TV. But it's so much more. We have a very strong marketing function. Like under our division, we have a marketing director. We've got the market intelligence manager. We've got a big, strong organization under there that's really helping guide the strategy and really kind of setting the direction for the division and helping with the executive team. So it's interesting to see and be involved in some of that. That's more than just the communication side or the commercials or the ads, but really seeing how our messaging and what we do is really helping the company has been very cool. And getting to learn that through people who've been in the company for a long time and very well respected has been good, and learning from them has been tremendous. I mean, I feel like in this position, I've gotten opportunities to see sides of the business I would have never seen as just a field engineer. So it's been cool. One other point on the learning and trial and error is, I think as an engineer, we want everything, not me personally, I'm maybe a bad engineer in this way. That's why I didn't go into actual engineering. But technical, people want everything to be perfect down to the decimal point. And sometimes with marketing, it's got to be good. It's got to look nice. We're not going to put sloppy work out, but it sometimes you have to like fail quickly or succeed quickly, hopefully. But when you put something out, you're not going to know if it's going to be good or bad until someone reviews it. And you could have them in your mind, in the committee and the group, and everyone's like, this is perfect. And you publish it and like it falls flat. And you're like, oh, we just spent all this time making it perfect and putting everything here, and it doesn't perform like it should. So I think, part of that trial and error is just putting out content, quality content, but putting stuff out there to be like to learn from. So you're not going to learn just thinking on it and sitting on it. And that's one of my learnings is just kind of like micro content, or getting content out, testing it, testing the concept. And if it does well, okay, doubling down. And if it does bad, okay, cut our losses and don't do that again. So that's one thing I think that we as a company struggle with, because we've been very technical, and we are still very technical. But as we kind of professionalize the communications function and get more like publicizing the brand and being more out there, we're learning that, we need to put content out, and sometimes it's not going to do good, but then we learn and do something else.
Yeah, I bet your podcast gives you a great ability to do that. Talk to us about the podcast. Like, how did you come up with that idea? What prompted you to want to move forward with that show?
Yeah. So that one, kind of funny story, I guess. Well, I'm going to backtrack again a little bit here, because I think some context, when we were Schlumberger, it's like the biggest company you've never heard of. We were very out of the public light. We weren't out there, we didn't have ads. We had a YouTube channel, but it was like, we weren't like pumping out like SLB or Schlumberger content. It was very technical in nature. And I think the senior leadership identified that right now in today's market, that's not the right strategy. And now we're SLB, a technology company. Almost overnight, our CEO is on the news, and we were on the New York Stock Exchange, and we're putting our brand out there and our name out there. And, we're part of the solution. I think that change allowed some of this kind of out there marketing, so the podcast.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, the podcast would have never existed. I guess the reason I bring that up is because we have all these amazing people in the division, in the company, really, but in division. And I met a lot of them. I was like, man, this person should be a celebrity. They should be well known in energy, oil and gas. So I felt the need was there to promote these, celebrities, and should be celebrities. So I started the podcast to show a couple of things. One, that there's diverse career paths in the company, that you can kind of create your own destiny, and then showcase the awesomeness, if you will, of these people. There was no protocol for it. So I just kind of did it and then asked for permission, and they said yes. And I still don't know if like it's beneficial. No, it's okay. But we just kind of going with it. And
Well, otherwise I was going to have to edit out like the last 5 minutes of our conversation.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, we just kind of promoting these people, and really it started off as an internal thing. And I was speaking with kind of like our career team, and they said, yeah, let's go for it. And I think, people have liked it. And there's people who've even reached out, hey, can I be on the podcast? And I don't know if it's because they really want to be on, or like because their buddies was on and they want to like, don't want to be left out. But it's been fun to get to know some of these, leaders in the company, leaders in the organization, and promote their story. And I think the people seem to like it. And I walk around, or not, okay, that sounds wrong. I've gone to like certain places as part of the job, and they're like, oh, you're the podcast guy. I was like, oh yeah. So people are listening and they like it and they enjoy it. And I think that's good, because it is nice to see that people are listening and they like the content and getting something out of it. So I can keep doing it. But yeah, I mean, there's no like profound reason. I just kind of tried it and people seem to like it. And that's kind of been the story of my career, I would say, and probably marketing as well. I see maybe sometimes gaps, and it's like, why aren't we doing that? And it's like, well, we don't do it. That's just not the way it's done. And it's like, well, why not? And no one really has an answer. And if there isn't like a specific reason why not, and it's not like going to be detrimental or negative, then like, let's try it.
Yeah.
I feel like I maybe do that a lot, and it's worked out pretty well so far.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is there's so much data showing that B2B buyers want easy access to research and information, even before they talk to someone, right? So your customers, your salespeople have great relationships with them, but even still, people want to be able to access things online. They want access to that thought leadership and the technical experts without having to go through a conduit or without having to fly to a trade show. And that's just kind of a reflection of how buyer needs, like how those trends have changed. So it seems like you've been able to create a platform with the podcast to just make that information more accessible, and the people who are the experts in your company more accessible.
Yeah, certainly. And the podcast is a little bit kind of like a side project, because I've been careful not to make it like salesy. It's meant to showcase, to your point, showcase that, make the person accessible and show twofold that, who these people are, and like, they're so awesome and cool. And the other side of that is show the internal employees, the SLB employees, and just people in general, that these people are people too. Like they have hobbies and have families and have this and that. And like, oh, I can relate to that person. And oh, they were a field engineer too, and they did the same thing that I did. And like, oh, and that's how they got there. So it's a way to kind of, humanize them and make them accessible, because sometimes I think we put leaders on pedestals, which, sometimes we should, but at the end of the day, they're still people, and they got there the same way that other people get there, and through hard work and being at the right place in the right time. But kind of hearing their story helps the average employee think, oh, I can do this or do that and grow their careers as well.
Yeah, it's gotta be great for like just building the company culture. I mean, your company culture, you talked a little bit about how the brand has evolved, but I would have to imagine that the company culture has like evolved right along with the brand change. I mean, they're so connected. You can't really separate a brand from a company culture. So I would have to imagine that's helping with that shift as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take too much credit or say that we're getting like millions of downloads and views, but for sure, to your point, the company culture was kind of ready to evolve.
Mhm.
And I remember as the Marcom, we kind of got a little sneak peek, but it was crazy. No one knew what the brand was going to be or the color scheme or the logo until the day it went public. I mean, it was pretty amazing. And I remember when they did that, and like in the hype and the our logo change on the website and everything just kind of flipped a switch. It just changed. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool and exciting. And I think there's a lot of buzz in the company, and we were ready for it. And I think the company's evolved along with the brand for sure. And I think our people reflect that definitely. And
Yeah.
really focusing on our people has been awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. You have some responsibility at in-person events like conferences and events as well in your role. Is that right?
Yeah, any kind of external marketing and communication. So we typically from our group send one person to each trade show, major trade shows, because there's like way too many to count. Even the ones that we focus on, there's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So what I wanted to ask you about is, have you had an opportunity to connect the podcast together with any of the in-person events? Has that opportunity presented itself to you yet? And what has that been like if it has?
Yeah, so that's like the why I started, because I was going to these events and meeting these people that I would have never had the opportunity to meet otherwise, whether it's geography constraints or just because I didn't have the. And so that was really the impetus of the podcast, to highlight these people that I've been meeting. And I've interviewed while there, like, because if I'm going to Singapore and there's someone in Singapore that would be good to talk to. But with the advent of like Riverside or Zoom online, I've been able to connect with people all over the world. But oftentimes it's from meeting them at a conference first. So again, it's all internal employees and all in Reservoir Performance, probably 98% of it. So yeah, I use trade shows as kind of like maybe informal interview process, like getting to know, oh, that person's really interesting, or hey, I haven't met that person before and their story is pretty cool. Let's set up an interview. I haven't really done many at the trade shows just because trade shows are nuts to begin with. But we had another podcast with World Oil, and we were recording some at the trade shows and conferences. So that was pretty cool there. That one was very much technology specific and solution specific.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons I was asking about that is because I think it's very challenging to create engagement at a conference or an event. So, I mean, that would even be like a follow-up question is, as you're going out and kind of thinking about the conference schedule or the event schedule, what are your goals in terms of like engaging with your audience, and what are some things that you do to make sure that that's happening?
Yeah, so I would say this kind of evolved as well. So we have a trade show team, thankfully, and they kind of manage the booth and the pretty much everything. And we are responsible for our content and the messaging, and again, aligning with the central team's messaging so everything's cohesive. Also working with our, what experts are going to come for that show and what the objectives are. So our responsibility is kind of, again, bridging the gap between the central team who's putting the trade show on and then our division, and saying, these people need to come, and then and we don't dictate what's going to be talked about. It's between the central team and the marketing function, and then the geography of the division. So they say, oh, these customers are going to be coming and they want to know about this. And so then we help put those pieces together, and then we go on site and make the content. But where we have some flexibility and freedom is the models, like 3D printed tool models or kind of interactive pieces. So I made at one point this, we call it a video game. It's just kind of an interactive screen to show our full solution. So instead of just kind of like a boring PowerPoint, and now some of our PowerPoints are really awesome, but instead of just going through a PowerPoint, I worked with our 3D team to build this like interactive TV touchscreen thing that you can kind of walk through all of our solutions in this world. Instead of looking at each one individually, you kind of look at it holistically and say, oh, okay, like these all connect here. So that was fun. And then coming up, we have a big conference in Monaco in September called the Digital Forum. It's every 2 years. It's a big show that we put on. It's hosted by us. And for our partner, we're showcasing our digital solutions that are really helping enhance our conventional services. And to highlight that, we're making this totally immersive experience with a cool company. So we're making big screens and 3D models and interactive. It should be really cool. So that part we have input on, and that's kind of like the fun side of it. And then, going to a trade show, it's all hands on deck, getting the content there, helping, getting registrations. It's kind of nuts. And then after the trade show, it's like, okay, it was good. So yeah.
Trade shows are exhausting. There are a lot of time and effort put in, but it's kind of interesting hearing how you describe your responsibility in a really large organization, because it's actually very tangible and relatable, even for a smaller or even a mid-sized corporation. You've got to be thinking about what's the overall brand presentation, what's the content I'm bringing, and what is actually needed in that region from the customers. And technically, a lot of times one person is having to figure that all out, but other times it's like, you just need to think about whose responsibility, who's accountable for each one of those areas. So I really appreciate the way you described that, because I think whether a listener is working for a big global brand like SLB, or they're working in a small business, those three hats or things to be mindful of are completely universal.
Yeah. I think part of our, we are very big, and there's a lot. We have a huge service delivery organization. Our marketing team or Marcom team is pretty big. It probably could be bigger. I think, we all have to kind of rely on each other. And it's kind of a beautiful thing when you think about it. There's all these different functions who have different reporting structures that don't intersect for a long time in the company. Somehow we all get stuff out there and get it done. So it's pretty amazing. And, I think there's a tendency for people to get kind of hyper focused in what they do and their kind of swim lane, I guess you can call it, and stepping back and saying, like, I am not a marketing expert. I am coming in here as a total newbie, and being open to people who've done it before and listening to them and understanding what to do has been, I think, the way forward. And seeing so many people do that within the organization is pretty amazing. So I think that's one good thing that our company does by moving around so much, is you like by default, you have to be that way. Otherwise you won't survive. And seeing so many people who are in this together, and, when the trade shows come together or a marketing strategy comes together or a campaign comes together, it's just like, oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I bet. What would you say is something that in your current role, like what's something you've worked on that you're just like, I'm really proud of that. That was hard to pull together. It made a big impact. Whatever the criteria is in your own mind, like what's something you've done that you're just like, I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah. So there's probably two big things I'd say that come to mind. One is our Science Rob video series. So last year, CCS, carbon capture and sequestration, is a big campaign, still is. And the main thing that came up from that, when our initial positioning, was that we need to educate, because it's still so new, and we're so good and known for our subsurface characterization for oil and gas, but CCS is new, and we need to educate. So what came to mind is Bill Nye the Science Guy. And so kind of being able to like go from, hey, I want to make something like Bill Nye the Science Guy, to a video and publishing a series was super fun. From writing the scripts in my kitchen, testing the experiments, to then publishing the series, it was really fun. And I felt very proud of that entire process. And then the other thing is kind of, along the lines of the podcast and just doing something new that I think we had a gap. So at trade shows, we used to launch services, and, we have these big launch events, but I noticed, like, oh, you go to a trade show and like there'd be 100 people gathered around, and like 100 people, but that's only 100, 100 people when you're trying to launch a service is not that many. And when you start looking, like, oh, maybe like 20% or 50% is SLB employees. I don't know what the breakdown was, but like 100 people is not enough, especially when you consider like thousands of people are at a conference. And they're really coming to the conference for the technical programs,
or the Consumer Electronics Show or something like
where
that.
it's like the showcase is the showcase for people are going to like the technical conferences, and they wind up in the exhibition for like free goodies. So I thought, what if we launch online, kind of like Apple does with their worldwide developer club? And then we planned 2 launches last year that we did online, and we utilized all of our business systems like email, social media, internal email, external email. And I don't know how many offhand numbers we got out, but it was like, we started seeing the registrations, like, oh my goodness, that is like way more than we've even do with like external people who put on tech talks for us. So we were super happy with that. And then we did the launch and I got to host it, which was pretty fun in Sugarland. The product champion or product owner was in Paris, and we put on this whole show. And just being able to do that for the first time without really any instruction and kind of writing it as we go, I was pretty proud of that. And we did it twice last year, and now other people are doing it this year. So kind of like get to see the legacy.
Really, that's very cool.
Yeah.
How are you guys thinking about how AI tools are fitting into the Marcom program? I mean, it's pretty challenging, I think, right now, and it's something I think pretty heavily about in our agency and like the delivery of our services, because I'm always really a little bit tentative about the quality of the information that we might get from an AI tool, but there's so many ways to apply AI. I'm just curious if that's something you're thinking about strategically or have started to embrace yet in the organization.
Yeah. So we have a pretty strong kind of, I don't know, partnership. I think there are partnerships with Microsoft, but we're dealing with huge data, a lot of reservoir and oil and gas and energy, a lot of data. I think we have some partnership with Microsoft in that side, but like our business tools, we use Microsoft Teams, all the Microsoft suite. And I know some people are getting test rollouts of Copilot, I believe. And Copilot is Microsoft AI thing. So people are using it in their average day-to-day business. Now we have so much concerns over data. There's a lot of IT concerns anyways. We've got like a little tool and about, hey, your system is healthy. I mean, there's like a lot of IT governance. That's what I'm trying to say. If you go to ChatGPT, it says, be careful, don't put in any proprietary data. Our company is very much monitoring it, and they have training and all that on AI. That said, we certainly do use it and we can use it. But to your point, nothing's like, hey, put it in AI, take it out and publish it. No, we still have a full writing team. We have like a big communications guidebook. We've got brand guidelines. So everything that goes out has kind of gone through that process. AI just helps. For instance, like a ChatGPT can help distill a big document and put it into digestible pieces, and then we could proofread it. And really, that's kind of a parallel to what we're doing as a company overall with digital. It's like digital and our digital enhancements and AI and all this isn't like replacing people's jobs. It's just making it easier to do the thing that the person is there to do. So like if you're going to process something and normally the process alone takes 24 hours and you have to do that for 24 hours, and then you can do your interpretation, like what you're getting paid for, but the part that you're actually meant to do. If you can eliminate that 24 hours or make that 24-hour period condensed into 30 minutes, that's like 23 and a half hours of free time now, or getting your answers earlier. So AI is just a tool to make people more productive. Some use it, some don't. I am not afraid to say that I use it, but it's just a tool, and then it gets gut checked and triple checked and double checked, because a lot of times what comes out of AI, you're like, yeah, this is crazy. I feel like AI, especially ChatGPT and some of these other GPTs, have their, like, you can tell, hey, that's a GPT. Like, it's very over the top sometimes.
No, I agree. I've seen a lot of that too. Those are kind of the same reasons that we're really cautious about having it be a deliverable. Like you can't use that tool to create a deliverable, but you may be able to use it to process through 100 options for something and determine like how to distill that down, like you said. Or gosh, you can take whole YouTube video series and put it into a transcript and get the high points from it. So now I don't have to watch the whole thing, but if I liked the gist of it or the summary of it, maybe I do want to invest my time watching the whole thing.
Yeah. And I like to your point. I mean, it's a tool. I have seen people just get, like, when we had an external company helping us, and like, hey, I think you're using ChatGPT. You need to proofread this. So I think people can tell. If I can tell, then I think other people can tell. So I mean, like you said, it's just a tool, and oftentimes we'll use it to distill something down and then rewrite it into like real words. But one that is really cool is Midjourney. I don't know if you ever messed around with that, but it's image generator. It's like Dolly, but Midjourney. It makes some amazing images. And we often use that. There's a gentleman on the team, John Liu, and he uses it to make like mood boards for production shoots. So to kind of give people a sense of what we're going to do or what images we want. And then you take the Midjourney one and you go out and take a real photo in the field. It's pretty cool.
Wow, that is really cool. I wrote that down.
Yeah,
I'm always
Midjourney. It's pretty cool.
Looking for ideas there. What about, I guess, kind of the last topic that I was going to ask you about is accountability. Like, how do you hold yourself in a Marcom role accountable to your objectives, and then like how that fits in overall in the company? Because I think accountability in marketing is a must have, but it can often be difficult even in the digital marketing space, because most of the time the accountability people expect is like, you did this and it gave us this much revenue, right? And there's often not a straight line you can draw between
Yeah.
those two things. So how do you view accountability in your role?
Yeah, that's a good one. We have many stakeholders. We have the comms function, as I mentioned, and then our division function, and we report into the marketing group of the division. But our customer really is the business line director. So we early on identify like we need to sit with them. And I think this is something that hadn't necessarily been done before, because I think a lot of times like groups and functions can operate kind of autonomously and forget who's working for who in a way. As an example, marketing thinks they're like leading the charge and sales thinks they're, and then there's not communication. And I think you can get an unaccountable manner where like you're just doing whatever you want. So we set with the business line director and the marketing manager and come up with our marketing director and come up with a plan for the year. And then we set objectives, and we have a system that has been around since I've been in, started as an employee, that puts in our objectives. So you can put in tangible objectives. And of course, some are like increase revenue. Okay, that is a little bit of a stretch, but it's like, then there's others like execute on this campaign and do these things. And maybe it's not, getting an X number of clicks or X number of whatever, but there are hard metrics that we can accomplish, because for every technology or solution that we're launching, we do need certain things to equip our sales team, like a product sheet, animation, images. So we agree upon a campaign strategy, and then we deliver on that, hopefully. And then there's stuff that fills in. So I like to put a lot and fill in a lot. And I think, the accountability is deliver on the things that you're expected to deliver on, and then over deliver. I think the biggest thing is making sure, and we have regular checkpoints with both the marketing manager, marketing director, and our business line directors to make sure we're going in the right direction, keeping them happy. And then he has his own organization and product managers, and having regular meetings with them, having those clear objectives set in the beginning of the year, and then working towards them, and then adapting if needed is kind of how we do it. But, I definitely don't operate on the rogue, not very often. Sometimes you got to take a chance and do something. I think when you're pushing the envelope a little bit, which is the fun part of marketing. But then the other times, as long as you're delivering, and if you can deliver on the things that we agreed upon, I think that's the best way to stay accountable. But
Yeah. And it sounds like you're prioritizing communication too, which I think is really important. It is very easy to just kind of everybody stays in their own lane. Even if you're checking off the boxes of the stuff that you promised to deliver, you have to make sure it's working. And you can't really figure that out unless you're communicating with each other and being open, and you're willing to hear the feedback and adjust according to the feedback.
Yeah, 100%. We have learned that that's like essential, because I don't know how it worked before I came, obviously, because I wasn't here. But I know that us having these meetings is a little bit newer. Like, I don't know how they communicated in the past, but my manager really, I give him most of the credit, but he set up these channels of communication. And there was a recent meeting. I got the opportunity to go to Paris 2 or 3 weeks ago again. So it was a second trip this year. So that is a benefit of the job, is, we get to go to our headquarters are in Paris. But anyways, I got the opportunity to go for a workshop, and a couple of people were like, well, why are you here? You're marketing. And it was like, well, because we need to be aligned. And by the end of the workshop, they're like, I'm glad you're here, because now you know what we're planning to do the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And having the opportunity to go, being invited, and getting to be part of that group, I think was just tremendous. And I think people see the value. So yeah, having that communication has been really good. And I think it helps with the accountability, because then your stakeholders, they know you. Same thing with the podcast, so it all kind of comes together.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, thanks for sharing everything that you shared. You're talking about things at like a global and large scale, but I've tried to pick out moments in the conversation where there's like a clear parallel that I think are just very universal challenges that you've run into, universal solutions that you've been able to put together. Thank you for being so open and really sharing some of what you've learned in your role. I really appreciate it. I think it'll help our listeners a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
if anyone is curious about marketing, I think they should definitely give it a try, but like don't come in and think you know everything. Definitely listen to people because like most of the time the challenges we have, someone else has had them. Like if you ever had like I'm sure you've, have an issue and like type it in on Google or Reddit and you're like, no one's going to ever have that. And like 20 people have the same thing. You're like, oh, okay. I guess I'm not that unique.
No, you're right though, that it's really common in the marketing space where you run into somebody. That's why having that community. I mean, I know that we originally got connected through a marketing community event,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so both of us, my company and you personally, find that to be really super valuable. The more
Yeah,
marketers you can know, the more you can learn. For
definitely.
sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I have some fun rapid fire questions to ask you at
Mhm.
the end if you're open to these. This is how I build my lists of places to visit, music to listen to, etc. So
Yeah.
here they go. They have nothing to do with work. They're fun.
Okay, cool.
So the first question is, what is your favorite trip that you've ever taken?
Too many. I don't know. I would say probably the most recent one. We just got back last week and we went to Costa Rica. So
Oh,
it was awesome and like super convenient from Houston, a 3 hour direct flight, and we were on the beach an hour later. So yeah, I'd say Costa Rica
man.
for anyone who hasn't been.
Okay. That is definitely a place I'd like to go. It sounds like you're fresh on the heels of that one too. So you're probably like still maybe a little in Costa Rica in your mind.
Yeah, yeah, like
Yeah.
a week old.
Musically, if you had to name a group or an artist that they can be dead or alive that you wish you could see in concert, who would that be?
Recently, I've been on a little bit of a Sublime kick because the Sun has like taken over as the lead singer. So they're like back out and touring. But I think Sublime, especially growing up in Southern California. Yeah, I think Sublime.
Okay. You came up with that one quickly, so that must be real. Have you read a book or do you have a book that you constantly find yourself recommending to people that has been helpful to
Uh,
you?
that's a tough one. One that I can recommend, and I got on a bit of this kick a few years ago, is by a guy named Peter Attia. So it's about health and longevity. It's his nonfiction. I actually haven't read the whole thing, but I listen to his podcast like pretty religiously every Monday. And it's called Outlive, and it's all about longevity. It talks about the health, the nutrition, and then the mental health part. But then, if you don't want to listen to his audiobook, his podcast is free and Spotify or Apple, I'm sure. And it's pretty good. I actually joined the private track, so I get all extra stuff. He's a pretty practical guy on like longevity. It's not like, hey, take this pill and you're going to live to 500 years old. No, he's like, no, do this and you like might have a better like the last 10 years of your life. So it's like pretty
Okay.
realistic.
And then the last question is, what is the best job you've ever had?
Well, company wise, this one it's the only. Well, I guess I had like I've made ice cream when I was in college, Cold Stone, but this company wise, SLB Schlumberger has been the only company. I'm very grateful for that, and I'd probably say this one Marcom has been tremendous. I mean, getting to see the global outlook, meet all these people, make videos. I mean, I found a passion for photography, for videography, all because of this role. So I think this one, it's really been fun and like the community and the marketing teams and just it's been awesome.
Wow, very cool. Well, Hunter, thanks again for joining me today. Tons of great information and just thank you. Thank you so much for the generosity and sharing everything.
Thank you. I'd be remiss if I don't say to the listeners, if they're still listening, be sure to tune into Beyond the Reservoir and hear about some of our awesome people at SLB.
Okay, take
All right.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to B2B Marketing Methods. Please be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you and connect. You can find me on LinkedIn or visit our company website at marketingrefresh.com.